And then he said, don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. Don't wish for less problems, wish for more skills.
I can't catch a break, guys.
Yeah.
Get them the fuck away from me. I can't be around those guys.
People think, oh, well, cleaning your room, that's just a cliche. It's like, yeah, really, eh? Just go ahead and try it.
If people had any idea how powerful sleep is for healing from anything, and the fact that it's free.
My mind is absolutely bulletproof, solid as a rock.
Podcast. And we're live. So, Brandon, how are you? How was your morning?
Yeah, it was good, yeah. Just finished an hour's Pilates and an hour's boxing. It's good crack.
Was that good fun? You're doing that in the last couple of weeks. Anybody who doesn't know, Brandon does a Pilates class on a Wednesday morning, 6 a.m. and a boxing class, 7 a.m. Open to members and non-members. If anybody is interested, feel free to send us a message. We can get you sorted with that. Get you sorted to a spot. Start your day in the right way.
Pilates 6 a.m., boxing 7 a.m. All right, so an early start.
Early bird gets the worm, though. You are the king of the early birds, Brandon.
I was actually at 5 o'clock this morning working out.
Didn't work out. See, when you got kids. Well,
this is it. Like, I mean, I just like, and I've spoken to loads of people who are the same. It's like you get up and start the day early, and then you come home and nobody missed you, which is great.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And again, so we're going live with this wee video. So if anybody is watching, feel free to drop a wee comment. I'll see if I can. If I see the comments come up, I will ask Brandon the question. The purpose of today's content is we're going to do a little interview with Brandon on his journey to becoming a coach, the great coach that he is. Anybody has worked with Brandon as a coach, maybe you want to drop a wee question below, or maybe give him some feedback on how his coaching has helped you on your fitness journey. So that said, Brandon, I'll start off. I got a few wee questions here. What is a coach, and what does it mean to you to be a coach?
What is a coach? That's a good question. A coach is a guide. A coach is somebody who kind of knows the terrain and has thought enough or studied a little bit about it to think enough from a learner's perspective and just kind of guide people and understand what it takes to communicate the process to somebody to bring them on as quickly as possible, as safely as possible. So obviously, you're trying to cut out all the mistakes that they would make that they're doing on their own, or that they would have made if they had it done on their own. So you're really just looking to speed up the process for people and get people the result that they want, and also help them enjoy it, and also try and help fit it in with who they are as a person, as an individual. So it's a very individual experience, and then obviously it's tailored from person to person, and coaches' styles can change from person to person because not everybody needs the same style of coaching. Like, some people need a hard ass, and some people need an arm around the shoulder, and some people need different approaches at different seasons of their lives.
Yeah, that's cool. And then, was there anybody that inspired you to become a coach?
Probably Eamon and Jim and Hugh and yourself. I mean, my coaches growing up definitely really helped. Like, it 100%. Like, those were some of the biggest influential figures in my life. Like, I know especially Jim, Hugh, and Eamon. Like, obviously you didn't come in until I was already maybe 18 because you were a young lad yourself. But like, I mean, those men in the early days, like, I still remember to this day doing a boxing session with Eamon and him teaching me about triple extension, like pushing off the foot. Like, I still remember that day. I remember a session doing with Jim and him teaching me to turn off with the left hook. I remember Q. I remember constantly on the pads with Q, just getting absolutely battered with the pads either side of the guard. And it's like, these very personal and individual experience, like, these are core skills for me now and core memories. And, these people who you trust enough to kind of take you that way and become very, very important people. And I remember as well a conversation that I had with Hugh when it was around the time of my leaving cert. He probably spurred me on to become a coach more than anybody else. I remember he said, like, to be honest, he's like, what do you want to do? And I was like, I don't really know. And he's like, well, do you like this exercise stuff? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, well, go find a way to get paid for that. Yeah. And that's what it was. So I think really the helping people came second, to be honest, because I was only 18 and I didn't really have any skills to help anybody, to be honest. So like, I wasn't confident helping people. I wasn't confident coaching people. I just wanted to stay in the industry. I just wanted to kind of keep exercising myself. And one thing that I noticed, like, always in the boxing club, I was always kind of like, it always frustrated me when I'd see people not giving their best effort. and obviously my coaching back then wasn't nearly as good, and I probably rubbed people up the wrong way. But like I remember like always just kind of having the instinct to push people a little bit. So I mean, the combination of those two, like I definitely, like I suppose an awful lot of us as well is like I always pushed, especially when I was like 14, 15, 16, and I boxed and I got a couple of bad losses. I remember just kind of got a bit of a chip on my shoulder about it, and I took it really personal. And then anybody who wasn't taking it as personal as me, I'd be like, come on, like let's go, like this is the game we're in, because one way or another they were going to come up against a loss like that, and either it didn't matter, in which case you shouldn't be there because you're getting slammed against the wall, or you're just bluffing and wasting your time, in which case go do other things was my perspective.
Yeah. And that is, I think that is kind of how we all start off, trying to kind of push people and motivate people. But then it kind of comes to the point where it's, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, and how to coach. Like that's really, I think, even from what you said about your experience with your coaches, is that's how you have a long lasting impact on somebody's life. When somebody knows that you actually genuinely care about them, and it's not just, you're not just pushing them for the before and after photos. Like you genuinely want them to have a true transformation and make long lasting change in their life.
Something really cool you just touched on, or you reminded me of there, is like one thing that a coach can do is see potential in you. Like I literally remember, like nobody had belief in me. Like I didn't have belief in myself, maybe bar Jim or Q or Eamon. Like these people, like, and whether or not they kind of had belief in you personally, or they just knew the process and they were like, there's greater in you, and I'm like we're going to push for greater. Like there's more there. And as a teenager, I didn't know that. Like I thought all I was all I was, and I thought that all I was at the time was pretty weak. And to have somebody push you and draw more and like force development out of you is like that means an awful lot to people. Like, because again, otherwise you wouldn't get it out of yourself, and you feel like less than because you're not getting what is there out of you because you don't think it's there.
Yeah, I think that's also very interesting, actually. As you said, like, is it the person or is it the process? And I kind of feel like a lot, like it's both, obviously, but I feel like what's mostly for me nowadays is like the process. I just know if anybody goes through the Fighting Fit process, if they go through the program, and they follow the steps and, tick the boxes along the way, pretty much anybody can have a really, really good transformation. Obviously, some people more than others. Maybe some people just have more genetic potential to be fit or to be strong or to be
quicker, maybe.
Yeah, but everybody that goes through the program has the potential to get incredible results, because again, the process and the person, people kind of put it down to natural talent and all this kind of stuff. But no, if most people go through the process, if you train anything for 10,000 hours, like you're going to become pretty close to world class.
Yeah, I mean, people don't realize me. I was talking to Chris, but like people don't. I'm not sure. Like obviously, like I don't think I'm anything super impressive. But I mean, like I got a brown band on that board, and out of everybody that I know, there's 3 of them. There's me, Chris, and Benny, and me and Chris went to a fitness competition there. And again, like the standard's not crazy, but me and Chris were by far the fittest there, and that's just a testament, like to how far we came. Because I remember being the weakest of the weak, like literally like the weakest. Like I couldn't do 5, 10 push-ups without feeling overwhelmed, and like. I was thinking about this today, like I was literally working on it today, and the thoughts just kept coming to my mind, like, oh, like this journey is going to be impossible. I thought it was impossible every step of the way. So to again put the title on somebody to kind of say you had it in you. It's like it was natural. It was, or like again, it was easy for you. It's like it's not. Like everybody it was difficult for. I was thinking of Matt Fraser. I was watching one of his videos, the winner of the CrossFit Games, and his journey must have been incredible. And I'm sure he thought thousands of times, like literally the title now, fittest on earth. I'm sure he thought he was like the weakest of the weak. Like I remember listening to him and he was saying like he was getting sick before the games, and he was looking around and it was like, oh, he looks super fit. Like he looks super fit. Oh, like he looks like amazing. Like how am I going to beat this, or how am I going to outpush this guy? It's like everybody thinks like that, I think.
Yeah, no, I definitely do agree with that. The kind of mental games, as he kind of says, just reminds me of boxing and stuff like that. Like you just always assume that everybody else is better. They have a better coach, better boxing club, better genetics, better experience, better everything.
Yeah.
But again, it's not always the case. These are the stories that happen inside everybody's minds. Like we are far more the same than we are different. And once we kind of really understand that, it just really kind of levels the playing field. I feel everybody's nervous, everybody's scared, nobody really knows what they're doing. The only thing that gives you an advantage is, did you do the work? Have you put in the time? Have you ran the roads, done the business?
That's that's some of the greatest difference between me now and me back then is like now I know I've done the work. And again, I know I don't like. It's not like I know that I've done work in the last 3 months, which is what it was. It was kind of like, oh, I hope that push in the last 3 months was enough. It's I know what I've done for the last 4 or 5 years. Like I know every day that I didn't want to do it that I've done it. I know every time that I failed, and all those failures at the time, though defeating, now looking back is like, well, that was an extra step, that was an extra brick, that was an extra attempt, and so it's like you have all those. So when it comes down to the moment of breaking point where you start to get those questions in your head, it's like, well, now you've got some answers. It's like, well, oh, I'm weak, I'm this and that. It's like, well, you ran 600 miles to get here. You know, it's like, oh, you've done 2,000 push-ups to get here. You've benched and squatted and done your mobility training. It's like seven days out of the week or 5 days out of the week, twice a day, whatever it is. It's like the more you have behind you, the more belief you have in yourself going forward.
Yeah. And so at this point in your career now, because you've been a coach now for a long time, you're still pretty young, because we started pretty early. Like I was straight out of college, straight into coaching, same with yourself. Like what has been your biggest lesson? Maybe, lesson for yourself in terms of how to be a better coach, but also kind of the biggest lesson, like say the most common, say, mistake that people would make again and again that they could maybe overcome with a simple tweak in their strategy or their thinking.
The biggest change that's happened to me in the last, so I'm doing this now, I think 8 years. So in the last 8 years, the biggest change for me has been Pilates. Like the biggest thing that happened to me was getting injured. And so getting injured, the biggest thing it taught me to do is slow down. Like I really did not have a humble enough mindset for the work that I had done. So I had trained, but not developed, because I didn't know. Like I pushed myself as hard as I could. As I said, like from 15 or 16, like I was pushing hard, but I wasn't doing like for talk's sake, when you're doing a push-up, we just know that if we go slower, it's going to be harder. And so it's all that kind of slow, controlled work I knew I hadn't done. So I knew, whether I knew it or not, I knew I hadn't got the flexibility. I knew I hadn't got the mobility. And that's all the slow work. It's the grindy, patient work. You want to rush through. You want to do box jumps, do explosive work. And all that explosive work just kind of came to a halt because the foundation wasn't right. And so slowing down for me, like I remember coming away from 2 or 3 years of just going slow and being the fittest I ever was. Like maybe not the most conditioned I ever was, but the fittest I ever was, because I built the foundation for a change. Like I went slow, did the Pilates, did the stretching, had the patience, set goals and milestones for weeks and months instead of kind of looking for days and hours. You know what I mean? And would put in the work anyway. And then if the result came sooner than expected, fine. And if it took longer, fine. But just having that patience and really just doing the slow and steady work changed me. And the injury rate in this gym has gone down, I would say, like 5-fold. Like I remember having a point of frustration when people would get a back tweak or a shoulder injury or a wrist injury, and the best advice I could give them was kind of, well, let's just avoid it. And I remember kind of thinking, oh, fuck, or like somebody get injured and they have to go to a physio and they kind of have to leave us then. I'm like, well, I don't really feel like I'm serving you in that sense. I feel like I'm dragging these people through workouts and pushing them. And then when their body gives up, I just kind of have to say, well, I don't really know what to do with you, kind of thing. And the ability to kind of take everybody, like I literally remember so clearly finishing a book or finishing a chapter in Supple Leopard about torque and about leg position and about spine position. And then going down and taking my first class and just looking around, I'm like, oh no, where do I start? And now when I go down to a class now, even with newbies, because these principles are just so ingrained in everybody now, it's like there's not nearly as much work to do. Whereas when you're taking a group of people who have been moving a certain way, and now you have to basically halt the brakes and go, pretty much everything needs adjusting. They're not wrong, because again, you learn how to train safely in college, but there is things that you just don't realize or you just didn't see before that now you see, and now once you see them, you can't unsee them, and you have to start addressing them. And they're not small problems. They're problems that are going to take weeks and months and years to fix. And you have to now convince people that what you're doing before is like, we're going to have to step away. We're literally going to have to regress before we progress again, even though you're in the middle of it, because now we can see a problem down the road that we couldn't see before. And that only came from me blowing out my shoulder, blowing out my knee, like I had to redline and be forced to stop before I'd stop. And then I had to start convincing people to go, okay, well, look, there's a better way. And a good cue for fitness generally is like, it was always harder. So people generally, like, once you kind of get them to slow down and then put them in a, like a better but tougher position, then they really didn't mind because you're like, oh, well, okay, I'm definitely feeling challenged. But that initial kind of change in perspective to kind of say, well, faster is not better, heavier is not better. And your understanding of how you move your body is a lot more, like it's a lot more complicated than you think. There's a lot more moving pieces here than you think. So we're really going to have to be mentally aware and start taking this on, not just as like exercise. This isn't just like you don't know everything. In fact, you're just like you're learning a new language, and so we have to start learning that language and adopting new kind of movement principles, like taking your spine into priority. Like now your spine's priority number one, whereas you maybe never thought about your spine before, and things like that. So, in short, like Pilates and just kind of going slow and really learning to prioritize positions and focus on joints and muscles and learning how they fit in with the body as a system, just like rocketed my results, but also greatly transformed how I feel about exercise, because now I'm not afraid to start slow. So once you start slow, everything's a lot more enjoyable, because now you're not just redlining it and it's difficult because you think that the only way to get results is with a 90 to 100% effort, and starting to understand that there's benefit at 60 and 70, and at 60 and 70 are sustainable forever, and you can have seasons and weeks and days where you burst up to 80 and 90%, but generally 70 and 80% is that's exactly where you want to be.
Yeah, but it's obviously a much harder sell, because people feel like with exercise, it has to be high intensity, they have to be sweating, they have to burn a lot of calories, have to be lifting heavy weights, and some people maybe just don't have and again, we're all guilty of this, don't have maybe the humility to slow down and say, actually, no, I'm a beginner. I've been exercising my whole life, but I've never really exercised consistently. I've only exercised, intermittently, even in high intensity bursts, and based on the foundation that I've built, I'm not fit for fifth gear. I need to spend a little bit of time in second and third gear here for a while before we go sprinting.
For talk's sake, let's say if we were to take a look at burpees, right? If we were to take a look at burpees and you're dealing with somebody, and maybe they're not aware, but they're burpeeing well, like their pace is incredible, but you could see that their ankles just aren't firing properly. Their ankles are super stiff, and so what you realize, like, well, as a coach, I can make you way more efficient and effective at burpees if we just slow down and develop your ankles. Is like, but short term, we're going to have to slow down. And it's like, oh, why would I do that when, well, like, what's wrong with my burpees at the minute? Well, nothing. It just could be better. And so it's not about everything. Everybody's a terrible performer. It's about, once we understand how complicated it is, and once we start developing individual pieces, well, now you can be better. And that's what it's about. And your training can be sustained long term. So we're starting to get into longevity thinking, and as soon as we start thinking generally bigger picture, that's a better way to think about things. And so again, each piece of the puzzle, like all your joints, your fingers, your digits, your wrists, your elbows, your shoulders, and then all the individual muscles, all have a specific role, all help play the support, and to build your support is literally one of the best things that you can do. But in order to do it, you have to slow down.
Yeah. And would you say then, like, is that the hardest part about being a coach, trying to get people to slow down, or do you feel like is there anything that's more challenging?
The hardest part about being a coach is it's trying to work with people who just don't want it. Like, they need to want it for the result that they want. Like, they want the result, and everybody wants the result, but obviously everybody's got limiting factors, but not everybody has it in their top three priorities, and it needs to be. Yeah. And it just needs to be. And one of the hardest things for me is it's literally like watching people go around in circles and generally try your best to help them, and they don't make progress, and their head just not in it, and they walk out the door and forget about it, is literally so infuriating, because of how much investment. Like I always try and invest into everybody, and when you give your all into something and get zero return, that's so frustrating. And then when you don't have control over that, that's frustrating, because like, again, for me, it's like I've got complete control, or semi-complete control, as much control as a person can have over themselves. So then to remove, like, it's like, okay, so everything I can do, and then everything I can do, but you keep coming back to me for the process, and I keep pouring the process into you, and there's just a hole in the bottom of your cup, because it's just like you're just not doing what you need to do in order to get the results, is infinitely frustrating for both people, because they're showing up and doing the work, but the work, like, it's a system problem. They're like, you can't just come into the gym and do the work and expect a result when your sleep's poor, maybe your emotional state, maybe your mindset's just not where it needs to be. Again, maybe you've got trauma you need to deal with, maybe you've got financial issues you need to deal with. And when somebody's, obviously, because again, look, that's all those stuff that I don't have to mention is quite personal. So when somebody's not forthright with you, they're not open, but they're, oh no, I want this, and you're pouring into them, and after a couple of weeks or a couple of months, you're kind of going, okay, well, we should see progress here. Oh, I'm doing everything. It's like, well, you're not, because as we said, the process is the process, and so the work you have to do isn't here. The work you have to do is out there, and I'd love to help you. I will help you, but you have to help yourself. And to get yourself into a mindset that you are willing to take on that personal development, like Jim Rohn talks about all the time, is like the journey of self-development, is to learn to work harder on yourself than you do in your fitness. Is like, if you're not getting the results you want in fitness, you're probably not getting the results you want elsewhere, or you're just a specialist. Like I said, if you're just focused on work and that's all you're focused on, if you're just focused on your family, you're just focused, like, then that's, well, fair enough, you're going to get great results in that one area. But it's like, in order to get, like, this is why I love fitness, and this is why I kind of love this industry, is because of that block. Because that block's there, is like, you are not progressing further until we start thinking of the system. Because, like, you will not lose weight if you're not disciplined, if you're not sleeping well, because biologically it is so easy to overeat. It's so easy to just let it all go. And so unless you are developing yourself and working on this craft day in, day out, you will get no results. And once you start seeing somebody start to move the meter and start to get results, it's like, oh, well, you're starting to get it now. You're starting to build that pattern, starting to build that lifestyle. And then fair enough, yeah, you'll come away. We all do. It's like, it's a seasonal thing. It's more of a growth thing. Like, there's not a good diet and a bad diet. There's wherever your diet's at, and we can improve it. But it is a slow, steady. But it's like, once you see somebody start to make that connection, and then they change one thing and then they change another thing, it's really, really encouraging. But when you see somebody and they're literally just running into the same obstacle again and again, and they keep or even they don't ask for help, you just have to watch them. And again, as a coach, I care. Like, it's hard not to care, especially in this gym, in our culture, because we know everybody, because we make a point to know everybody. And so when you know somebody, and like, for talk's sake, it's like, it's really double affirming when you see somebody new coming in and they lose a stone in a month, because you, as a coach, can sometimes forget, like, when they walk in, it's like, oh, you look different. Oh, you've been doing the process. Oh, right, yes, that's what it looks like. But yet, no, you could look at somebody who's in the same spot for 2 years, and again, they're being as genuine as they can, which are like, oh, I'm doing it. And it's like, you're not, though. Yeah. These results are actually a lot quicker and a lot more noticeable when you're doing it 100%. And now you don't have to do 100%. You can do it 10%, 20%, but we notice a change, and it's very, 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 very frustrating for me to want to help somebody when they want it. Like, because for me, a big issue these days is obesity, and the reason it's an issue for me is, like, I don't struggle with it personally, but I've been in the room with people who are literally distraught about it, and months later are still in the same boat, and that's hard. It is hard to talk to somebody who's genuinely upset about something. The power is only in their hands. You're helping them as much as you can, and then they're still there in 6 months and still as frustrated, and you know that there's better for them. That's hard.
Yeah, it's hard to watch people suffer, particularly when it's self-inflicted suffering. But I think as what you said, like, it really does come down to, and that's kind of something I kind of had a realization with, like, with our program again. Like, and again, we go above and beyond relative to other programs, relative, like, basic gym memberships, that kind of stuff. Like, our program is far more in depth, far more personalized, far more coaching, far more one-on-one. But at the same time, there's a certain level where it comes to where I just my realization, because I'm obviously working on myself and on my own journey of personal growth, and I struggle with a lot of these issues as well, because like I started this whole business because again I am the worst client. I need fighting fit. I need I need the support. I need the coaching. I need the structure. These are things I need to be successful. But then you just come to the point where you realize like it is trauma. It is these deep rooted issues. Like if people have been trying to lose the weight for 10 years, for 5 years, for 10 years, and you keep letting yourself down and you keep self-sabotaging. It's like you need therapy, or we need to go a little bit deeper. We need to look at time management. We need to look at your priorities. We need to peel them back. We need to work more closely together. We need to go deeper, because obviously what we're doing is not enough. And this is, a little plug. Like this is kind of why I'm kind of want to get into things like the reset retreat, to kind of have that opportunity in that space to go deeper with people and kind of ask them, what is your goal? But why do you want to achieve it? And have a deep, meaningful conversation about it, and to create the plan and plan the week and ask you about your obstacles and the different things that are holding you back from achieving that, and like create this plan that you believe in so you can get invested and hopefully finally get the result that you want. Because usually it's not fitness. Like it's not like people, we all know in theory what we're supposed to be doing when it comes to exercise and nutrition. Like it's not that complex in theory. Like, that inner voice tells us, is this a healthy meal or is this a non-healthy meal? Is the portion too big? Is the portion too small? Did I exercise as hard as I could have exercised? Again, we have this internal voice that tells us the truth all the time, and we prefer to block it out, and we call it bad mental health, when it's just like that's your conscience telling you that you're moving from the path of being the best version of yourself. But like you said, like there is a better way, and it is hard to watch people do it. And it's hard to watch ourselves do it, because again, we've all been through it with different things. But again, it's not the fitness, it's not the nutrition that holds people back. It's the other stuff. It's managing their emotions. It's their time management. It's it's their, like, there's no vision, there's no mission, there's no purpose, nothing that kind of really energizes them on these journeys. Because it is hard. It's always going to be hard. Like life is hard. Me and Jen were talking about it last night about whatever challenges we're facing at the minute. It's just saying, Jen, like, this is it. Like it's always going to be hard. Like there's always going to be problems. We just have to get good at rolling with the punches and just keep moving forward. Like there's never going to be a point in our life where it's easy peasy lemon squeezy. Like there's always going to be a challenge. When you overcome one obstacle, another obstacle is going to come up. But these are the opportunities that life presents us to grow. And it's like that's the only mindset that I can think of that's going to help us get through it. Like we just got to keep moving forward and roll with the punches.
So a nice way to think of it, you just spurred an idea in my head. Imagine, like, we've done hell and back. So anybody, if you've never done hell and back, like if I done hell and back and I didn't have, like if I was just going to work and all of a sudden I got pulled onto a course, like I said, like through emergency, like for talk's sake, there was a bomb and I literally had to run through hell and back, it would be awful. And just a sudden shift of casual to intensity would be like, it would be shocking. Whereas when you're doing hell and back, after a while, like jumping into the ice bath seems normal, jumping into the river seems normal. And so it's like, that's kind of where you're at. Whereas think of the culture shock between lying on a dinghy or a wee pool floaty in the middle of a river, asleep, reading a book, like literally just not, and somebody just flips it. It's like the shock is way worse than jumping into the river in hell and back when you're braced and you have the momentum of all this kind of challenge. You're in the mind. This is what we're doing. And so if people have an easy life and then all of a sudden they get flipped, the spaz out response is going to be much higher than somebody who is prepared and engaging with it really, really readily. And so if you're looking for an easy life, fine, enjoy the pocket of easy. But there is 100% coming in life. And when it happens, if you're sitting and your mindset is adjusted to chilling, it's like, well, enjoy the shock, because it's gonna hit you very, very hard, because your nervous system is not ready for it. And that's something I noticed. Remember we talked about the last podcast. I had one cold shower since our last podcast. Nope. That's a victory. And so I had one cold shower, and I really struggle with it. Like, again, I'm talking about it, and again, your mess becomes your message. Like I'm Mr. Ultimate struggles with his mindset. I'm Mr. Ultimate doesn't want to work out. Like, again, that's one of the reasons why I'm doing this kind of stuff, is just because I know I need to be challenged in it. But like the ability to just crank that thing to zero, it's like in my mind, like I have a comfort mentality. Like I seek comfort. I love comfort. I think we all do. And so, you know, to shock yourself and force it cold is very, very difficult, but very beneficial, because you want to be in that mindset where you can do it. And something I think about all the time is, like, I always think about I always think about David Goggins. And so, like, his whole thing is, like, he wants to be the hardest man on the planet. And, like, I say to myself all the time, like, yeah, I want to be the hardest man on the planet. I was like, you can't even handle a cold shower, to be honest with you. I was like, so you're no more of the heart. Like, my nervous system, like, my mind is willing, but when it actually comes down to the moment of the pain, it's like it's different when when it's all in here. But when it actually comes into reality, it's like how you deal with it. And that's why the cold shower to me is my challenge. It's like, you're not that tough if you can't even handle a shock to your nerves. Like, there's no damage. You're not going to die. It's literally just sheer torture, manageable torture for torture's sake. The colder the water, the harder it is, the more meant. And I was freaking out under that water. Like, I was like freaking out. And so, like, that's not tough. And that's what you want to work on. And so,
because I've had experience as well with cold showers, like, recently, and just had a realization. I was like, I've gotten so soft. I remember, like, a few years back when I was, like, proper training hard and boxing and that kind of stuff. Like, it was like, I kind of in my head, like, no, if you want to be a champion, this is the price. Like, you have to be able to do these hard things, and I just get in, turn the fucking shower down, and, you know, just breathe through it. Now I'm like, I can't do it. Oh my god, it's so cold.
This is one of the drawbacks, though, to this slow and steady mentality that I have. And so, you know, like, I've got a slow and steady mentality, so it doesn't require intensity. But obviously, when intensity is required, it also needs training. This is kind of what the level method's all about. It's like, what is your weak area? And for me, it's like, obviously the weak area for the longest time was slowing down, and now I've become excellent at slowing down. Now the challenge really is intensity again. And so, again, it's about, like, obviously you need both. I'm not telling anybody, you know, just go slow the rest of your life. Obviously intensity is necessary, but it's a cold shower, guys. Challenge yourself. Like, if you think you're struggling mentally, if you can take yourself to the place where you can force yourself to have a cold shower or a cold bath, it's risk free, but it'll show, again, it'll just show you who you are. Start thinking about it. Just start thinking about it. That's all I challenge anybody. That's what kind of the stage I'm at. I don't want to challenge anybody to do something I'm not doing myself. I had one cold shower in the space of a week, and again, it was only that conversation that got me to get into the cold shower, because I didn't want to be an absolute fraud showing up to the podcast. But, like, the mental battle for that, it lets you know who you are.
But also, and the most interesting thing about it, I think, is, like, how good do you feel after the cold shower? You feel incredible. Similar like exercise. Exercise feels tough at the time, but you feel incredible after the cold shower. Like, there's nothing like, if you need to wake yourself up and feel alive, feel alert, you know, and, like, feel like, you know, your brain is firing. Like, when you come in that cold shower, like, you are elated for many, many hours. And again, there's good research that shows, like, cold showers are a great way to treat depression. You know, so, like, there's something to suffering. There's something to, as you mentioned earlier, like, the comfort zone. Like, the comfort zone really is a killer. Like, people who spend their whole life in their comfort zone are some of the most dissatisfied people that you will ever meet, because they haven't challenged themselves. They're not on the path to becoming the best version of themselves. And I was listening to a couple of videos yesterday. I think it was actually Maslow and Jung and a couple of these guys. I was basically like, you know, that is, like, the life's purpose, like, the path of self-actualization. That's what all the happiest people in the world have in common. They're on this path to becoming the best version of themselves, and they're working towards some sort of mission, some sort of greater goal. Like, that seems to be the secret. And the people that are just stuck in the 9-to-5 day-to-day, you know, they seem to be the most dissatisfied, unhappy people that there is. And I feel like we overcomplicate kind of particularly mental health and stuff like that nowadays. It's like people that feel like they're struggling with mental health, but it's like literally like you're like a caged dog in the back garden that never gets for a walk. Like, what do you expect? Like, of course you're anxious and jittery. You literally, like, you're like walking around in circles. Like, you know, like, you get out of bed, you work in your home office, you go into the kitchen, like, you know, you get 2,000 steps a day. Like, what would you say if there was a dog out the back that literally never got out for a walk, never got played with, never got petted? You know, this stuff is much more simple. Me and Jen, were we talking about things she's saying, she was like last time, she's like, we're kind of working through a few things or something like, well, what's, how could we be better? And I was like, oh, I'm just really tired. I feel like I'm just really tired all the time. We're like, well, why could that be? It's like, we're not just going to accept it. Like, oh, I'm just tired and create this kind of limiting belief around ourselves. Like, okay, why is that? What are we doing differently this last couple of weeks? We had to look at our phones. I was like, fuck, I'm actually spending a lot of time on my phone this little while. So maybe because I'm on this scroll on social media, because again, obviously it's part of our work. We got email, we got fucking Facebook groups, you got, like 10 different social medias to kind of to be looking at, notifications coming in 24/7. But it was like, okay, that was the problem. So then what we did, we took action, and now I've got this new thing. Got this app, it's called Minimalist. Basically turns my phone. My phone is just black now. It's almost like turning my smartphone into a dumb phone. So like trying to kind of be self-aware, and that's like, what are the actual things that keep coming up? Why is that? It's like, don't like have a limited reason, just say, oh, I'm just depressed, or I'm just a negative thinker, or I'm just fat, or I'm just lazy, or it's like, well, why are these things? Maybe your environment isn't set up in a way that supports your goals. Maybe you're not around the right people. Maybe you don't have the right plan, the right structure.
Maybe you haven't done the reps. Because that's the big one for me. Like, I was talking to somebody yesterday, and they were telling me they were dyslexic, and I said, all right, okay. And so I did exactly what I do for PT physically. It's like, right, let's take out a sheet, read this for me. And they're like, oh, and they read a little bit, and it was fine. There was a couple of words I didn't know. I was like, well, so far, and again, I'm like, I don't know anything about it, and sometimes I feel like that's where the power is. It's like, I'm not putting you in a box. We're just judging you for where you're at. And so it's like, right, so there are a couple of words, read it again, no problems at all. And so, right, so far the only issue is your lack of grammar. So you don't have a good kind of concept on, a wide amount of words. And maybe, like, I don't have a head for numbers. Maybe I don't have a head for numbers. You don't have a head for words or numbers, fair enough. It's like, it's definitely a disadvantage, definitely not great. But that's not to say you can't learn it. And as soon as you take on that belief of, like, I'm dyslexic, fair enough. One thing to take it on. It's another thing to take it on and then let it go. Well, now that means I can't learn. I can't learn to read. It's like, I'm sure there's an example out there of a dyslexic person reading at an incredible level because they've dedicated themselves to it. And that's kind of one thing that coaching people has really taught me, is that people are capable of incredible growth and incredible change. Like, I remember sitting down when you challenged me to start reading the book every day, an hour after work every single day. And I remember literally sitting there and, like, I think I talked about this in the podcast before, like my foot tapping and just like trying to read the book, and just like my mind just going a million miles an hour and just not having the patience for it, because I was dedicated and because I committed to it. Like, I just read through it, and eventually, like, I started to love reading. And so it's like, well, what was happening there was, like, it was just you never practice reading, and people just, oh no, I can read, I read in school. It's like, no, when did you personally read? When did you start reading and start enjoying the book and actually try and digest the book? And again, go slow, have the patience. It's like, you can't read a book, you can't read a page in a minute, no matter how bad you want, unless again you're a speed reader. But it's like, you can't just skip. The whole idea is to go through sentence by sentence and go on this journey. And if you want it here and now, you want the book done yesterday, it's like, well, you're not going to get through the book that way. You're certainly not going to enjoy it. It's like, sit down and spend the time. And so many people, the same with meditation and anxiety and depression, is like, and again, obviously, look, depression comes in all different shapes and sizes. But like, if we're literally just talking about this apathy for life, you just don't care, you just can't motivate yourself. It's like, Jen, it's like, what reps are you putting in? Tell me after you've done a month of fitness, a month of meditating, a month of going to sleep on time. And then the big thing is, like, what is the conversation in your head? Is like for toxic, like something with me and you that we just do all the time. Like, we rely on quotations. Like, if there's a problem, well, there's a quote for it. It's like, we don't necessarily, like, I don't really care what my knee-jerk reaction is, because I know that there's a better principle out there. And so after a while, that becomes automatic, and it's just this forceful positive thinking. Because the alternative, and again, like, I'm not sure if you remember me as, like 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, like, I was the worriest wart in the world. Like, I just wasn't a positive person. Everything was just around and around and around and around and around, because that's all I knew. And so if I just had to continue that, I would be depressed today. I 100% would be, because how could you not be mulling around negative ideas in your head?
Yeah, because I remember when I was a kid as well, like, even like into young adulthood, I was like so fearful and anxious about a lot of things. And I literally, like, through a process of personal development, like, reprogrammed my subconscious mind, like, by listening to the same things over, listen to people like Jim Rohn, Les Brown, all these people. And again, just drilling these positive statements in my mind. Like when I was running, I'd run and I'd just listen to the same motivational tapes over and over again. And that was probably the most impactful thing that I've ever done in my entire life, was just listen to motivational tapes. Because again, when I was listening to stuff, there's a great YouTube channel, I think it's called James Rodriguez, I'm pretty sure it's called, but he done he reviews like these personal development books, and there's one there like how to reprogram your subconscious mind, or what to say when you talk to yourself. And it's like, people just don't know. Like, people just don't know. Like, you know what I mean? And again, in the age of information, ignorance is a choice. It's like, if you feel like there's the same problems coming up again and again and again, we're much more similar than we are different. If it worked for me, it'll probably work for you. But it's like, we need to, the mind is like a garden. We got to plant positive seeds in there, because the weeds just grow naturally. Like when it comes to mindset, like that's it. Like that explains pretty much everything. It's like, you're not planting any positive seeds in there. All that you have is negativity. You're completely reactive to your environment. Your environment dictates. Your phone and your family and your friends and your work, they dictate the things that are going into your mental factory. And then it's like, what are you doing? Like, what books have you read? What tapes have you watched? Like, what are you putting in there?
How do you know where to draw a line then for these things? Who's teaching you how to draw lines, and who's teaching you? Like, for talk's sake, like, just when you're after saying that, like, when like all these negative factors are coming into you, how do you know not to take them all on? Who's ever told you? Because what research have you done to learn otherwise? And that's what personal development's all about. And again, if you're listening to this podcast, this would be step one to, again, Stephen's after naming some people there. Again, on multiple other podcasts, we actually, a half a book club, of podcasts. Like, we recommend books all the time. So that's where you start. So start listening to new information, so that way you can have the information to go, that's a good decision, that's a bad decision.
Yeah, I feel like one of the most dangerous things people do, like in that book, the Four Agreements, like, this kind of thing, like words are magic, words are spells, and like, you cast spells. If I say, hey, Brian, you're a great lad, I just cast a spell, and you're like, oh, I feel great. Now if I say, Brandon, you're a dick, I don't really like you, you're not a good person, I was like, oh, that can completely change your state. Like, you can like, words are spells, like words are magic in that sense.
Yeah.
And it's like, we got to start challenging our own beliefs. Like, just that voice in your mind is not your highest self all the time. Like, you're in, like, literally, like, that's the voice can really drag you down.
You really did hit a high note for me there when you said, though, about the motivational speak. Because now that I think about it, like, fair enough, when I did my Pilates and all that kind of stuff, I didn't have David Goggins yet. He wasn't about. But I remember doing the Headspace app, and generally that was what got me centered and got me sitting down to do the work. Was that, like, it wasn't my own Headspace, it was the guy talking on the Headspace app. And fair, he was class, and his coaching for meditation is brilliant. And then for my fitness, for the running that I did, I got my half marathon distance, which is one thing, and then I got the half marathon time down to under an hour and a half. And David Goggins was literally in my ear all the time. And then over lockdown, like, every work I'd get up. I literally remember it so clearly, that droning negative thought, go back to bed, oh, you need a nap, oh, you're not going to be fit for this later, you're going to be wrecked now come 12 o'clock. That conversation. And I remember just in the car, David Goggins on, and that was like, that was how I program myself, and that was how I got into the mindset. And this morning, like, I remember when I was a teenager, and I'm not sure, how many people are looking for music recommendations for getting pumped up, but like, literally Eminem, 50 Cent, like, when I went to the box, like, and I only realized it this morning, is like that music, that gangster rap music, like, literally it just puts you in that headspace of, like, I'm ready to attack everything. Like, if you listen to the words, and fair enough, some of it's very vulgar and violent, but I mean, to push yourself and get energized and push to that point, is like, that's what gets me going. I know Chris loves house music, but again, it's that but whatever it is that gets you into that headspace and gets you revved up and ready to go is super important.
Yeah, these are all tools that we can use to change our state, and that's kind of what it is. Like, the reason people love the Start to Your Exit, it completely changes your state for the rest of the day. Things that get you to breathe deeply, things that get the blood circulating around your body. Like, it's very simple when you think about it. Obviously, that's going to help. And so many people are going through their life and don't have access to, well, they do have access to these tools. They don't utilize these tools that are, again, freely available for everybody. But yeah, because I know you got a PT now in 10 minutes. I'm going to finish with one more question here. And it is going to be, if you were the president, what one change would you make to help people be healthier and happier? Like, what do you feel like from maybe from an institution perspective? Like, what could we do as a society, as a community, to really kind of help people be a better version of themselves?
Put me in the spot. What would I change?
like, do you feel like even like, growing up in school, do we learn the right things in school? Is it a culture shift that we need? Is it a standard shift? Is it a resources problem? Like, how can we help people be the best version of themselves? Because obviously, listen, like when you look at the numbers, like the obesity rate is going up, the depression rate's going up, we're heading in the wrong direction. What we're doing right now isn't working, despite the fact that there's more gyms available than ever before. We've got more access to nutritious food than ever before. There's more information available online than ever before. Like, what is it? What is stopping people?
So first thing I would do is I would get rid of chairs in schools and in the office. Not like mandatory, you can't sit on chairs, but that would not be the culture. The culture should be to sit on the floor. Sit on the floor and squat and stand and make sure, because again, the biggest issue for everybody in this day and age that I deal with physically is posture. And it just comes, there's Kelly Starrett and Ben Patrick have a podcast, and they talk about this exact thing. And those two guys are pretty well tuned on it. Obviously, they're talking about America and all that kind of stuff, but we're not too far off. And they go in depth. So if you're really looking for an answer to that question, I think that those guys have a great question to it. And they suggest that, again, it's like there's nothing we can do about this generation. That's gone. But the next generation, we have to start in the schools. So one thing that we got to do is we got to fix, their physicality. And so obviously I was dealing with a team of footballers who were like 8 and 10 years old and just doing general tests. The mobility was already terrible, but the turnover was a lot quicker because it's not like the bad shape isn't as well ingrained. Like an 80-year-old person or a 60-year-old person is going to have a lot more wound and bound joints and muscles than the kids. Like the kids were improving week to week. So and they were 8 and 10. So it's still not too late for these kids. But we have to fix how people move so that way moving physically isn't as painful and as difficult. So if from a young age, everybody's squatting down, just playing with toys, everybody's sitting cross-legged, their hips are open, their posture's good, maybe starting every day with a little yoga session, but starting with these kind of, like obviously, look, we used to do prayers in the morning, when religion was maybe a little bit bigger in the culture. And so maybe now we could switch that to being a little bit more mindful. And so starting the day with meditation practice and taking in like cookery classes, like into primary school. Like cooking is a skill that everybody should know how to do. And so wherever about it, like if you want to grow your own vegetables, fair enough. It's like, that's I think a bigger culture shift, but it's like, learning how to cook for yourself. Like home economics should be done from a grassroots level. PE should be 2 to 3 hours a day, and it should be maybe morning and evening and not playground. That's outside of the break where kids get to just do what they want. But physically training your body is like, this is your meat suit. Like this is what everything is running around on. And if it's in poor condition, so the fuel and understanding how to cook is like chips and chicken nuggets and pizza is potatoes, burgers. It's like, that's people's knowledge of food. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Like, what more do you have? What's for dinner?
Yeah.
Yes. Pizza, curry. I don't know. And that's the conversation that I have with people when we're setting up meal plans. Like, oh, what do you eat? Oh, I don't know. You put me on the spot. It's like, yeah, it's tough. You have never even thought about it. You just pick off the menu and it's chips and chicken nuggets and sausages. And
it's just emotion based. You're eating based off how you're feeling on the day. Like there's no real plan or strategy. It's just what I fancy today. And again, we all get stuck in them cycles. I feel like a lot of people got stuck in that cycle over the last couple of years. It was kind of the takeaway culture and that kind of stuff. They kind of maybe fell away. Some people thrived. Like, it's not fair to say everybody, but a lot of people have struggled. And to be fair, we're biased because they're the ones that I am talking on the phone to. People have gained a couple of stone. Myself and school included. I think we all struggled. There was a lot of stress. It was unprecedented. But as you said, like life comes in seasons. I feel like you gotta just ask us, okay, what can I do today to move forward? Like, stop beating yourself up, just move forward, take the action, do the things.
I would 100% have mandatory physical exercise. Kelly Starrett, he had an idea of like, a mile walk every day. So a mile walk, like in school, kids go for a mile walk every day as part of school. But again, another thing that I would have, like a mandatory movement class. And so you have to educate teachers on, again, the stuff that I talked about the Pilates. So that's now what teachers do. You are teaching the youth. Why is physical movement not important? Well, because we're too focused on geography. And again, yeah, fair enough, it's important. But how much geography do you remember? How much history do you remember? It's like, so we should maybe specialize a little bit more on the human being and less on the territory stuff. And so again, let's focus on physicality first. We have to learn how to move, and then you have to pick a sport. You can change that sport, and maybe it'll change seasonally. Oh, we're doing basketball this week. Girls, having their cycle possibly on file with the school is like, right, and fair enough. You don't have to, on your time of the month, work out. Fair enough. We've got other alternatives for you. Maybe some social classes, maybe some home economics, whatever it is, but a skill-based thing. So we're focusing on skills. And again, it's not this pressurized system of, it's not even competition. It's individual performance and something like the level method. So it's like, look, we're doing basketball this week. We're going to try and shoot a basket. We'll start with the basket down really low, and then we'll build, and then we'll take a step back, and we'll build, and then we'll take a step back. And the same with shooting. All right, we'll start right in front of the goal. We'll walk back, and there's levels. There's beginners, intermediate, advanced. And so again, we're teaching people how to develop skills. And so it's not just about football. Football is not what matters. What matters is that you understand how to get good at football, and you can take it as far as you want. You can do the same with running. You can do the same with basketball. You can do the same with sewing. You can do the same with cooking. Like, just starting to teach skills, and then obviously subject matter as well. But it's like, maths and English, and then after that, then it's like, why can't we just spend secondary school doing your like? Why do you need to know geography at 6? You don't. Yeah. You don't really. It's like
that's why with us, me and Jen, like, we're kind of looking a lot into kind of Montessori types teaching, which kind of cultivates independence in the children. And it is like the days are completely child-led, because again, the most productive thing you can do to a child is to let them follow their curiosity, let them spend the whole day learning about that thing that they're curious about on that day. Maybe one day they pick up a geography book, maybe another day it's all sports, maybe it's cleaning or cooking. Like even Molly, they're like, I don't know, like your nana was around yesterday and she was in helping out doing the cleaning and that kind of stuff, like literally had clothes up, brushed, like man to help. Like kids given right, like the worst thing you do for a kid is have them to sit down all day and listen to a teacher and that kind of stuff. Like, it's just not. We know better. It's not the best path forward.
This is what it is as well. It's like this whole thing is like, I don't think that the system is. I just feel like it's hard to change, and it was good enough up till now. Like human beings are progressing, and if you look back 100 years, we're so much better on the education system. Everything's improving, but there is some big blind spots that we have now, and obviously those should be addressed soon. And I kind of feel like with the whole COVID thing, it was just a greater example of like how long it takes to shift something that's obvious. And so it's like, right, once COVID became like obvious that it's like, right, it's not as big of a deal as we thought at the start. And fair enough, people died. It was serious. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying once we realized it wasn't as serious, we acted as if we couldn't change for the longest time, because and fair enough, to shift the momentum of an entire nation takes some time. And so that's what we need to start doing. And maybe that is what's already happening, because, obviously new school teachers, I'm sure they'll tell you that movement's been prioritized and all this kind of stuff. So I'm not sure if it's not. I'm just saying, there are obviously some recommendations. Obviously we need to learn how to cook, and we need to learn how to move, and we should be moving towards this kind of, kids know what's best for them at some point. And obviously they need an awful lot of guidance, because they're also absolute rascals. And kids have this duality to them where they're literally little angels and also little demons. And so again, it's just about cultivating one side. But I feel like what you said is like, when we sit them down in one place, like we're literally like inspiring that thing to just rebel. It's like, oh, I don't want to sit here anymore, blah, 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 blah. Whereas you just kind of let them free reign, and they're interested in something, they'll be good as gold.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I do agree. Like teaching young kids fundamental life skills, but also more so movement skills. Because when you said that thing about kind of your initial point was posture is one of the biggest problems people have. But then what that also does is this. So like, I'm not sure if people have heard about the studies about like, the Superman position. Like when you stand up, you take up a lot of space. Like literally, like your testosterone increases like 200-300%. Like if I stand this way, like put my hands on my hips and kind of stand up and that kind of Superman pose, like my testosterone is increasing. Although I'm sitting there, I'm not sure if it's the same. But if I was to stand up, that will make a significant difference to your day. And especially in today, one of the biggest problems we have today, especially when people can talk about motivation and different things, is like a lot of men have low testosterone. It's because of lack of exercise, lack of muscle. The contaminants in their environment and their nutrition. Lack of sleep, loads of different reasons. But again, this literally will increase your testosterone 200%. So like getting people to stand, shoulders back, chest up. These small little things seem simple, but they could have like significant impact over the long term. And even like obviously in Asia, where there seems to be everyone's getting fatter. Like no matter where you look. but at the same time, not at the same rate. And a lot of that is because this, the toilet situation, the eating situation. They sit on the floor and they eat in a lot of cultures, and then they also, they go to the bathroom and as a hole in the ground, so they have to be able to maintain that deep squat position for many, many years. So that is pretty interesting.
And again,
so guys, listen,
that leads into later life, and so again, a lot of the issues that the elderly are having could be solved, obviously, and have to be solved at a grassroots level.
Yeah, and again, wondering like the flexibility test for the level method we use, like for the first like 3-4 levels, is like predominantly a primal squat, because again, if you can do a good primal squat, it means you've got good thoracic extension, good ankle mobility, good knee mobility, good hip mobility, and you're halfway there. Then you kind of start moving on to the overhead position. But guys, we'll wrap it up there. On behalf of myself, Fighting Fit, and I'm sure all your coaches over the years, Brian, I want to thank you for your work, your commitment to your job. Anybody works as far as I know, only has good things to say. You're an amazing coach, an amazing person. Thank you so much for that, and dedicating yourself to Fighting Fit and being a coach, because the world is definitely a better place for it. If anybody's watching this, wants to maybe leave a little comment, let Brandon know if he's had an impact on them. What your experience is like being working with him. We'd love to hear about it. And if not, guys, we'll see you again next week. Myself and Brandon are on a good routine now. We're kind of meeting up at least once a week to kind of do these types of podcasts. If you have any questions, any queries, any topics that you'd like to hear us cover, we would love to hear from you. And hopefully we'll see you during the week.
So thanks so much, guys. Bye.
Bye.